So we have another MCU film by the name of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness hitting theaters this week. And helming the project, we have Sam Raimi, where he must tackle Doctor Strange, who casts a forbidden spell that opens a doorway to the multiverse, including alternate versions of himself whose threat to humanity is too great for Earth's mightiest heroes.
Welcome back to Eco Reviews.
I'm Eddie.
I'm Jip.
And today we're going to review Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Off the bat, this had Raimi's footprints all over it. It felt like one of the first MCU movies to have its own unique style towards it. I'm really surprised as to what they got away with the PG-13 rating.
Sam, I won't be spoken to in that manner.
You talking back to me?
This movie is violent.
This movie, to my surprise, was actually pretty scary. This movie is truly a horror. Like, there are jump scares.
You know, prior to our screening, I really thought that this movie would just have horror elements. You know, the first horror MCU movie. You know, what are we really gonna get? But this was honestly, I can honestly call it a true horror film. Me being a horror fanatic, this was awesome. It was scary at points.
You know, you still get those typical Raimi shots. You get a lot of pupil zooms. You get a lot of like fast moving cameras and zoom ins. You get those
close-ups,
wacky transitions. All that good stuff is present in this film.
Although I would say that there is a lot of that in here, and if you're not a typical Raimi fan, you don't love his style, the movie's not really gonna work for you because it's kind of present all throughout.
This movie does not let you breathe. From the minute this movie starts, it's just straight action sequence after action sequence, and holy crap, it is amazing. And of course, what is Sam Raimi without his amazing composer, Danny Elfman? And man, did he blew it out the water with this film. Like, this score was present, it was profound, and it was impactful in every scene. It was a little reminiscent of the Spider-Man 2 theme, but it was altered just enough to give this movie its own identity.
And what I really like about Doctor Strange is that his ego is always apparent in every single film that he's in. You know, whether it being his standalone films as well as his, you know, the movies where he's just playing a side character. I love that it's always in every single one of them. So now let's get into the MVP of the film.
I never thought I was ever going to say this from an MCU movie, but Elizabeth Olsen might need an Oscar.
You know what? I'm going to have to say the same thing. I feel like she brought so much to this role. There's just so much emotion she gives in this film that I truly believe that she does need to be nominated.
I really love how the MCU really fixed her character. If you have not seen WandaVision, I 100% recommend it before watching this film. But Wanda in this is scary, and oh my gosh, I never thought like the MCU could pull it off.
The horror elements work so well, especially with her character and her being the villain. It just really honestly terrified me in some scenes. Now, I couldn't help but to think in the back of my mind of, what if Scott Derrickson had not left this project and how he would direct it? However, I think they picked the perfect guy to do it in Sam Raimi.
Groovy.
But while she's also being super scary, she's also delivering these really emotional scenes as well. By the end of the film, I wanted to cry. I'm sorry. Like her acting was just so good, and I truly felt all the pain and anger and frustration she's been feeling.
She was so good as the villain in this film that she kind of overshadowed Doctor Strange sometimes.
I'm sorry, but this is her movie. This is the House of M.
So we get a new character in America Chavez, and I thought she was fine for the most part. She isn't annoying or doesn't have like annoying quips. And that's another thing I want to commend this movie is that it's not your typical cringy MCU humor.
Oh, God damn.
But she's fine in the role, and I wouldn't mind seeing her in other movies.
I thought the chemistry that Chavez and Doctor Strange had was really great. I really like her as a character. I thought she brings something new and interesting to the universe, especially when it comes to multiverses, as she could just bring up a portal and jump through it. So I really commend her. I will say there are cameos in this film, and this is a spoiler-free review, so we're not going to talk about any of them. However, I will say the way this movie handled them was amazing.
Yes, I'm so happy that this wasn't a cameo fest and we were just going to get cameo left and right and say, oh, I'm here, look, I'm here. I'm so glad that the cameos we got were in service of the movie.
I'm really glad that this movie prioritized just delivering a good story rather than, you know, trying to be this, you know, cameo heavy, super fan servicey type of film.
Another thing is that this movie is also 2 hours. So if it was a cameo fest, it would not make any sense at all.
I will say the theater was roaring. Like, everybody was clapping, everybody was having a good time, but it wasn't too distracting. This movie was a blast to watch. There's a lot of fighting, as I mentioned earlier, and those fight scenes are just completely awesome.
Some of the VFX shots kind of take you out. VFX for the most part are pretty well done. However, obviously with almost every MCU film, that some of the visual effects are a little strange.
It's strange. Maybe.
There were also continuity issues in this film, and although it didn't bother me, I could see someone else pointing them out. For the most part, everything was shot really nicely, and the VFX were actually one of the better aspects of this film, as I thought like the landscapes and the settings were absolutely breathtaking.
So unfortunately, this isn't the perfect movie, and you know, one movie is perfect. It has its flaws, and what were some of the flaws that you thought about the movie?
I think the biggest thing for me was it was just a little messy, especially when it came to the script. There was a lot of exposition, and you know, it worked for me for the most part, but it will rear its ugly head during rewatches. And it also has those typical MCU MacGuffins where you gotta collect a certain item and everyone's fighting for that one item.
Yeah, I also had the same problem with the film. However, it didn't annoy me for the most part. However, it is kind of on the messy side. You kind of will have that in a multiverse movie. Trying to condense this into a 2-hour mark is not the easiest thing to do, but for the most part, I feel like Raimi and the screenwriters did a pretty decent job at that.
This is one of those films where I will say the vibe is just way better than the plot, because the plot is a little stupid sometimes and it's a little messy, but the vibes that this movie gives are just immaculate, dude. I love watching it, the score, the colors. I love watching the Raimiisms coupled with the Danny Elfman score, plus all the cool hand acting and the magic and the fighting and the gore and the violence. It was all a perfect mesh of awesomeness, and that's the biggest takeaway that I had from this film.
Now, the plot is really simple. It's just Doctor Strange trying to save this American Chavez character. Everything around that, you know, is just really awesome in scale and awesome in the epicness of what the Multiverse of Madness is. I feel like the multiverse side could have gone a bit crazier than what we got, but for the most part, it was pretty epic.
Especially comparing it to the other multiverse film we got in this year. You know, they could have did a bit more, because I feel like if you're having a multiverse movie, that is your chance to just go crazy. So this is where you put all your creativity and wacky ideas. And, you know, this movie did have some of that, but very briefly. You know, I've been really critical of the MCU lately. However, this was a banger. And honestly, I'm not afraid to say this might be one of my favorite MCUs. I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 5.
You know, I'd have to agree with you on this one of being the better MCU films. I like it a bit more than the first Doctor Strange. However, I'm not sure how it will end up upon rewatch. I'm gonna have to give it a 4 out of 5 as well. So that's it from us. I'm not sure why this film is getting the hate that it's getting. I feel like there's a lot of more bad Phase 4 stuff. This movie was awesome. Well, that's it from us. Where you go.
Like and subscribe.